The Montana wilderness held its breath. Dawn broke cold and pale over the Bitterroot Range, painting snow-covered pines in shades of ash and silver. The kind of morning that made a person believe the world had stopped turning somewhere in the night. Silent. Still. Waiting. Margaret Thorne stood in the center of her training yard, breath misting
All
in
right,
air,
let's go.
sharp enough to cut.
Come on, this way.
72 years old, and she moved like winter
Good
itself,
dogs.
slow, deliberate, unforgiving. Gray hair pulled back in a braid that hadn't changed style in 40 years. Hands scarred from 1,000 different wars, both foreign and personal. 3 German shepherds worked the obstacle course before her. Young dogs, rescue trainees. They bounded through snow with the enthusiasm of creatures who didn't yet understand that the world breaks everyone, eventually. Atlas, hold, her voice carried without volume. Command born from decades of making men and animals obey in situations where hesitation meant death. The largest shepherd froze mid-stride, one paw suspended above snow. Good. That dog would save someone's life one day. From the porch of her cabin, another set of eyes watched. Older eyes, wiser, sadder. Rebel lay on weathered boards, muzzle resting between massive paws. 7 years old. Black and tan coat dulled slightly by age and too many deployments to count. 4 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. More missions than the Pentagon would ever declassify. A scar ran along his right flank where shrapnel had torn through muscle and ended his military career 18 months ago. He didn't participate in training anymore. His days of jumping obstacles were behind him. But he watched, always watched, because watching was what warriors did when they couldn't fight anymore. Maggie glanced at him. Their eyes met across 30 yards of snow. She saw herself reflected there. Retired, scarred, carrying ghosts no one else could see. The radio on her hip crackled. Weather service, another winter storm warning. Blizzard conditions expected by nightfall. Interstate 90 likely to close. Visibility near zero. The kind of storm that killed unprepared travelers every year. She turned it off. Weather didn't frighten her. She'd survived worse than snow. The cold didn't frighten her either. She'd been cold before. So cold her fingers wouldn't work to reload a weapon. So cold she'd watched good men stop shivering because their bodies had given up trying to generate heat. What frightened Margaret Thorne was silence. The kind of silence that came after gunfire stopped. After screaming ended, after rescue attempts failed, and all that remained was the terrible quiet of knowing you'd tried and it hadn't been enough. She carried that silence everywhere. It lived in her cabin, in the space where a husband's voice used to fill rooms with laughter. David Thorne, Navy SEAL, dead 33 years now. Cancer took him in 1991, but the wars had started killing him long before that. The silence lived in the empty bedrooms she'd never filled with children. In the photographs she kept in a locked drawer because looking at them hurt too much. 7 faces, 6 dogs, Vanguard 7. The classified K-9 unit that had operated in shadows so deep even most of the military didn't know they existed. Of those 7 handlers, only one still drew breath. Her. Maggie ran the morning's final drill. Search and recovery. She hid a training dummy in the woods, waited to match a full-grown man dressed in winter gear that held scent, then released the dogs. They worked with focus. Noses down, tails high, beautiful in their purpose. Atlas found the dummy in 4 minutes. Record time for a dog this green. Good boy. She knelt in snow joints, protesting, and rewarded him with a piece of freeze-dried liver. His tail whipped back and forth. Pure joy. Dogs were honest that way. They didn't carry the past like people did. Every morning was new. Every reward earned. Every command a chance to prove their worth. She wished she could be more like them. The news crackle came through the radio again before she could stop it. A reporter's voice measured and serious. Authorities continue to search for 16 women reported missing across Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho over the past 18 months. FBI officials say they're investigating possible connections between the cases, though no official task force has been announced. Families are urged to remain vigilant and report any. Maggie switched it off, hard, fingers tight on the dial. 16 women. She knew that number would grow. Numbers like that always did, because people who trafficked in human beings didn't stop at 16. They didn't stop until someone made them stop. And sometimes even when people tried to make them stop, it wasn't enough. She knew that better than most. The memory rose unbidden, unwanted, unavoidable. February 1987, Afghanistan-Pakistan border. She'd been 35 then. Handler designation Shadow, part of a 7-person team running operations so classified they didn't appear in any official record. Vanguard 7, Each handler paired with a military working dog trained for combat scenarios that would make standard K-9 units look like pet obedience school. The mission extract 8 women being held in a compound used by Soviet-backed smugglers. Intelligence said minimal security. In and out. Simple. Intelligence lied. The ambush came fast. Explosive charges blew their entry points. Small arms fire from positions that shouldn't have existed. Someone had known they were coming. Someone had prepared. 3 handlers died in the first 90 seconds. Maggie could still see them. Still heard their voices on comms going silent one by one. Handler Raptor. Real name Christopher Wade. Took a rifle round through the throat. Dead before he hit ground. Handler Sentinel. Real name Marcus Chen. Caught in the initial blast. Burned alive while his dog howled outside flames no animal could penetrate. Handler Ghost. Real name Thomas Garrett. Married, father to a 6-year-old boy. Died covering Maggie's retreat while she dragged 2 wounded teammates toward extraction. She'd held Thomas while he bled out. Watched life leave his eyes. Heard his last words. Tell my boy I did it for them. For the women. Tell him. She never got the chance. The mission was classified, buried. Thomas Garrett's son grew up believing his father died in a training accident. The 8 women they'd tried to save Maggie learned later that 4 had been executed during the firefight. 3 had died from injuries during transport. 1 survived. 1 out of 8. Maggie had tried to investigate afterward. Tried to find out who'd betrayed their position. The inquiry went nowhere. Political connections. Classified sources. National security. The phrases people used when they wanted truth to stay buried. So she'd carried it alone for 37 years. Grief, guilt, the weight of promises she couldn't keep. She looked at Rebel again. He was standing now, ears forward, staring toward the road, alert posture. Something coming. Maggie's hand moved automatically to the Glock holstered at her hip. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive in places where hesitation meant death. But it was just a truck. Forest Service green. It slowed at the turnoff to her property, then continued past. Rebel relaxed, lay back down. Maggie released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Getting paranoid in your old age, she muttered. But paranoia had kept her alive when 7 others died. Paranoia and luck, and the fact that she'd been harder to kill than anyone expected. She loaded the training dogs into their kennel run, checked water bowls, confirmed the gate latches. Routine, structure, the things that gave shape to days that might otherwise drift into nothing. The wind picked up, temperature dropping, storm coming. She'd need to bring in more firewood, check the generator. Make sure the satellite phone was charged in case cell towers went down. Standard preparation for Montana winters. The kind of self-sufficiency she'd learned during her years of trying to disappear from a world that had taken too much from her. Inside the cabin, warmth hit like a physical thing. Wood stove burning, cast iron radiating heat. The space was small, 1-bedroom, 1-bath kitchen that opened into a living area dominated by the stove and a single worn chair. But it was hers. No photographs on the walls, no memorabilia, nothing that marked her as anything other than a woman who trained rescue dogs in the mountains. The locked drawer in her bedroom told a different story. Inside, her old military ID with a photo of a younger woman who still believed the world could be saved. Ribbons and medals from commendations she'd never been allowed to discuss publicly. Letters from families of the men who'd died, and 1 photograph, Vanguard 7, taken in 1986. 7 handlers, 6 men, 1 woman, 6 dogs. Maggie stood on the left Titan II at her side. Thomas Garrett stood 3 people over, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. He'd be dead 8 months after that photo was taken. She didn't look at it often. Looking hurt. Rebel pushed through the dog door, shook snow from his coat, and claimed his bed by the fire. He circled 3 times old ritual, then collapsed with a groan only aging warriors understood. Maggie made coffee. Strong, black, the kind that tasted like regret and necessity. Outside clouds gathered. Darker, heavier. The storm would be bad. She had no way of knowing how bad. No way of knowing that in 6 hours a car would slide off the icy road 3 miles from her property. No way of knowing that the woman driving that car carried evidence that would blow open a trafficking network 30 years in the making. No way of knowing that the past she tried to bury was about to claw its way back into her life. All she knew was what Rebel knew, what every combat veteran learned eventually. Peace was temporary, war was patient, and the quiet before the storm was often the most dangerous time of all. Act 1, be the officer, 200 miles away. Lieutenant Ryan Garrett stood in dress uniform and stared at a memorial wall he'd seen 100 times. Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, California. The wall listed names of SEALs killed in action, bronze letters, polished stone, the kind of monument that looked impressive in photographs but felt hollow when you knew the men behind the names. Thomas Garrett, his father, third row, 12 names from the left, killed in action, 1987. That's all Ryan had ever been told. No details, no mission specifics, no closure. Just a folded flag and a mother who'd burned every photograph, every letter, every piece of evidence that David Garrett had existed because the pain of remembering was worse than the emptiness of forgetting. Ryan was 6 when his father died, old enough to remember a man who'd thrown him in the air and caught him, young enough that the memories had faded to impressions. A laugh, strong hands, the smell of gun oil and aftershave. That's all he had. He joined the Navy at 18, made it through BUD/S at 22. Spent the next 16 years trying to understand the man whose name he carried and whose shadow he couldn't escape. Now at 38, he was a K-9 handler himself. Not because of family legacy, he hadn't known his father worked with hogs until he was already in the program, but because something in him responded to the work. The clarity, the honesty. Dogs didn't lie, didn't hide, didn't classify truth as need to know. Unlike the Navy that had sent him here, his commanding officer's words still echoed. 2-week evaluation assignment, Montana, Naval Training Facility outside Missoula. They're testing new K-9 protocols. We need eyes on the program. You're our best handler. Should be straightforward. Straightforward meant boring, meant sitting through briefings and watching drills he'd run 1,000 times. But then the CO had added something else. There's a civilian consultant nearby, former handler, retired in the 80s, call sign Shadow. Command thought you might want to make contact. Ryan had frozen. Shadow, that was part of Vanguard 7. The CO's expression had been carefully neutral. You know about Vanguard. I know my father was in it. I know it was classified. I know everyone in that unit died or disappeared. Not everyone. The CO had slid a file across the desk. Thin, most of it redacted. Margaret Thorne, handler designation Shadow. Only surviving member, lives off-grid about 20 miles from the base. She doesn't do interviews, doesn't attend reunions, doesn't talk about the program. Ryan had stared at the file, at the single photo that wasn't blacked out. A woman in her 30s, hard eyes, standing next to a German shepherd that looked like it could tear through steel. She knew my father. She served with him, that's all I can confirm. Ryan had taken the file, spent 3 days reading what little wasn't classified, which wasn't much. Vanguard 7, operational from 1976 to 1987, K-9 Special Warfare Program. Missions redacted. Casualties, 6 handlers, K-A1 retired. Dogs all deceased. That was it. 11 years of operations reduced to 3 sentences. His father's entire adult life. Gone. Buried under classification stamps and need-to-know restrictions. And this woman's shadow had been there. Had served beside him. Had survived when he hadn't. Ryan needed to know why. The flight to Montana took 6 hours. Commercial to Missoula, then military transport to the base. He checked into visiting officer quarters, attended a briefing that was exactly as boring as expected, then requested a vehicle. The base commander approved without question. Going to see Shadow. Yes, sir. Good luck. She doesn't like visitors. Ryan drove north, into mountains that grew steeper and wilder with every mile. Snow deeper. Roads narrower. The kind of territory where people went to disappear. His GPS marked the turnoff. Unmarked dirt road, private property signs. No trespassing. He turned anyway. The road climbed, switchbacks through pine forest. No tire tracks. Snow undisturbed except for animal prints. After 3 miles, he saw the cabin. Small, log construction, smoke rising from a chimney, kennel runs visible to one side. A woman working in the yard with dogs. He parked 50 yards out. Didn't want to spook her by driving right up. The woman turned, saw him, didn't wave, just watched. Ryan stepped out, kept his hands visible. Protocol when approaching anyone with military background. She waited. He approached slowly, boots crunching snow, breath misting. Up close, he could see her clearly now. Gray hair in a tight braid, face lined by weather and years. Small frame, but the kind of posture that suggested she could still handle herself. And her eyes were the same as in the photograph. Hard, assessing, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much and survived anyway. Ma'am, He stopped 10 feet away. My name is Lieutenant Ryan Garrett. I know who you are. Her voice was rough. Smoker's rasp despite no smell of cigarettes. You have your father's eyes. The words hit like a punch. She knew. She recognized him. You served with him. I did. I need to know what happened. She looked at him for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then she turned back to her dogs. That's classified. He was my father, and he was my teammate. Doesn't change classification levels. Ryan felt frustration rise, tamped it down. Ma'am, with respect. Shadow, she cut him off. If you're going to invade my privacy, at least use my call sign. Shadow, he adjusted. I've spent 30 years trying to understand who my father was. The Navy won't tell me. My mother destroyed everything that might have helped. You're the only person left who knew him. Please. She worked in silence, checking water bowls, latching kennel gates. Finally, she spoke without looking at him. He was a good man, good handler, better than most, loved his son, talked about you constantly, wanted to be home more, but believed in the mission. What mission? The kind that gets people killed. Her tone was flat, final, subject closed, but Ryan couldn't let it go. Not after coming this far. Did he die well? That made her pause. She turned, met his eyes. No one dies well in combat, Lieutenant, but he died doing what he thought was right, saving people who couldn't save themselves. That's all anyone gets to hope for. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was more than he'd had before. Thank you. She nodded once. Dismissal. Ryan should have left, should have walked back to his vehicle and driven away. But something made him stay. Maybe the way she moved, military precision even in simple tasks. Maybe the scars on her hands that matched the ones on his own. Maybe just the fact that she was the only living link to a father he'd never known. Can I ask one more question? She sighed, irritation clear, but she didn't say no. Why didn't you stay and why retire? The question hung in cold air. When she answered, her voice was quieter, almost lost to wind. Because I failed. And when you fail in my line of work, people die. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't carry more ghosts than I already had. Before Ryan could respond, the dog on her porch, a scarred German shepherd he hadn't noticed before, stood abruptly. Ears forward, body tense, alert. Shadow's demeanor shifted instantly, hand moving to her hip where he now saw a holstered weapon. Someone's coming? Ryan heard it then. Engine noise, distant but approaching. Fast, too fast for these roads. Shadow's eyes narrowed. You expecting company? No, ma'am. Then we have a problem. She moved toward the cabin. Quick. Efficient. Ryan followed automatically, combat instincts taking over. They reached the porch as headlights appeared through trees. Not one vehicle. 3. And they weren't slowing down. Shadow pulled her weapon. Glock 19. Well-maintained. Ready. Get inside now. Ryan's hand went to his own sidearm. M9 Beretta. Standard issue. Ma'am, I'm a SEAL. I don't care what you are. This is my property and I don't know what's coming inside. But neither of them moved, because the lead vehicle had slid to a stop in her yard, door opening before it fully stopped. Someone stumbling out. A woman. Young, bloodied, ice coating her jacket, moving like every step hurt. She saw Shadow, saw Ryan, tried to speak, couldn't, collapsed in snow. Shadow was moving before the woman hit ground, decades of training kicking in. She reached her in seconds, checked pulse, breathing, started assessing injuries. Hypothermia, frostbite, possible concussion. She looked up at Ryan. Help me get her inside. Ryan moved without question. Between them, they carried the woman up porch steps. The scarred dog Rebel Shadow had called him once moved aside but stayed alert, watching the road, watching for more trouble. Inside, warmth hit like a wall. Shadow cleared her table with one sweep of her arm. Papers scattering. Lay her down. Carefully. They positioned her. Shadow was already moving, stripping wet clothes, wrapping thermal blankets, taking vitals with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. Pulse is weak, 45 beats per minute, breathing shallow, core temp feels around 92. She glanced at Ryan. Field medic training. Yes, ma'am. There's a medical kit under the sink. Grab it. And warm water, not hot. Warm. Ryan moved, following orders because Shadow gave them like someone who expected obedience and got it. The woman on the table moaned, tried to speak. Shadow leaned close. Save your strength, you're safe now. They're coming. Who's coming? The woman's hand clutched something. Laptop bag. She wouldn't let go even semi-conscious. Shadow pried it free, gently. Opened it. A laptop. Password protected. But also papers. Photos. And Shadow's expression changed. Hardened. Ryan saw what she saw. Photographs of a hunting lodge. Women visible through windows. Young women. Too many. Armed guards outside. Maps. GPS coordinates. Names and a sheriff's badge. Montana County. Shadow's jaw tightened. Who is she? The woman's eyes fluttered, focused slightly. Detective Julia Brennan, Wyoming, State Police. She was a cop running from something. Ryan and Shadow exchanged looks. This wasn't random, wasn't coincidence. What were you investigating? Shadow's voice was gentle but firm. Trafficking. They took Emma, my sister, 8 months ago. Found the network. Sheriff Nathan Brooks. He runs it. 16 officers, 3 states. The words came in gasps. Broken, but clear enough. Shadow's face went very still, very cold. Ryan had seen that expression before. On operators right before missions went loud. How did you find me? Didn't. Car crashed. Mile down road. Walked. Saw lights. Random chance then. Terrible luck or divine intervention, depending on how you looked at it. Shadow began warming protocol. Rebel had positioned himself next to the woman. Body heat, instinctive. Ryan helped, following Shadow's instructions. The woman Julia started to stabilize. Color returning, shivering less violent. Then Shadow found it. She was checking Julia's jacket, looking for ID, found the badge. And something else. A device. Small, sewn into the lining. Military grade, GPS tracker. Shadow held it up, face grim. Lieutenant, tell me what this is. Ryan examined it. Active transmitter, encrypted signal, range 50 miles minimum. She didn't put this here. No, ma'am, someone planted it. They both understood what that meant. Julia had been tracked. Whoever she was running from knew approximately where she'd gone. And if the tracker had been active when she crashed, Shadow moved to the window, peered out into growing darkness. How long does the signal last after separation from the power source? Ryan checked. This model could broadcast for 12 hours on battery backup. She crashed an hour ago, maybe 90 minutes, which meant whoever was tracking her had known her general location for the last hour. And this was the only structure for miles. Shadow turned, looked at Ryan. How good are you in a fight, Lieutenant? Good enough. You're about to prove it. Because through the windows they could see new headlights, multiple vehicles coming fast up the mountain road, coming here. Julia's eyes opened, fear bright and clear. They found me. Shadow's hand went to her weapon. Rebel growled low, deep, the sound of a dog that had been to war and remembered what it meant. Ryan pulled his M9, checked the chamber. 15 rounds. 2 spare magazines. Might not be enough. Shadow looked at him. Can you shoot? Yes, ma'am. Then get ready, because I don't think they're here to talk. Outside, the vehicle stopped. Doors opening, voices carrying on wind. Professional, tactical, coordinated. These weren't random criminals. This was something worse. Shadow moved to her gun safe, opened it, pulled out an AR-15, checked it with practiced ease. How many? Ryan counted Shadow's. 6, maybe 8. Armed? Assume yes. Shadow's expression was carved from stone. Lieutenant, I need to know. Are you willing to fight on U.S. soil against possible law enforcement? Julia spoke up, stronger now. They're dirty. All of them, working for Brooks. Can you prove it? Julia nodded toward her laptop. Everything, bank records, communications, manifests, all of it. Shadow considered. 30 seconds that felt like years. Then she chambered around. All right, we do this smart, no heroes. We hold them until we can get federal help. Ryan nodded, combat mode activated. But then a voice came from outside. Amplified. Loudspeaker. Julia Brennan, we know you're in there. This is police business. Send her out and nobody gets hurt. Shadow looked at Ryan. You believe that? No, ma'am. Neither do I. She moved to the door, cracked it, voice carrying cold and clear into the night. This is private property. Show me a warrant or leave. Silence, then laughter, dark, amused. Don't be stupid, lady. We're not here for you. Just send out the detective and we'll be on our way. Shadow's voice didn't waver. I'm a U.S. citizen on my own land. You're trespassing. Leave now or I'm calling the sheriff. More laughter. Ma'am, we are the sheriff's department. Shadow glanced at Ryan, whispered, basement. There's a tunnel. Old Cold War bunker. Comes out by the equipment shed. What about you? I'll hold them. Give you time to get her out. Ryan shook his head. No, we hold together or we run together. For a moment, something that might have been respect crossed Shadow's face. All right, on my signal. She turned back to the door. Last chance. Leave peacefully or... Gunfire erupted. Automatic weapons, shredding the door, windows exploding inward. Shadow and Ryan dropped, glass raining down. Rebel barked once, sharp, alert. Shadow rolled, came up with the AR-15. Returned fire through shattered windows. Controlled bursts. Professional. Ryan did the same. M9 barking, keeping heads down. Basement now. Julia was already moving, adrenaline overriding hypothermia. Ryan covered her. Shadow laid suppressing fire. They made it to the basement door. Down wooden steps, into darkness. Above them, footsteps. The assault team entering the cabin. Shadow hit a switch. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing a tunnel. Concrete, leading away into mountain. Go. Fast. They ran. Behind them, shouts, orders. The sound of tactical teams clearing rooms. The tunnel was narrow. Low ceiling. Smelled of earth and age. Emergency lighting every 20 feet. Barely enough to see. Rebel led, moving fast despite his injury. Shadow behind him. Julia next. Ryan taking rear guard. Gunfire echoed behind them. Someone had found the tunnel. Faster, Shadow's voice. Command, authority. They emerged in a shed. Equipment storage, snowmobiles, survival gear. Shadow was already moving, grabbing keys, starting an engine. Get on now, Ando. Ryan helped Julia onto the back of one machine. Shadow took the controls. Rebel jumped into a cargo sled attached to the rear. Ryan mounted a second snowmobile. Started it. Engine roaring to life. Behind them, figures emerged from the tunnel, weapons raising. Go. They went. Snowmobiles launching into night, into storm, into darkness. Bullets whipped past, close. Too close. But Shadow knew this terrain. Every trail, every ridge. She led them into forest where vehicles couldn't follow. Where only snowmobiles in desperation could navigate. They rode for 20 minutes. Hard. Fast. No lights. Finally, Shadow stopped. Killed the engine. Listened. Nothing. Just wind. Just their breathing. Just the hammering of hearts that remembered what it meant to run from death. Julia was shaking. Not from cold this time. From shock. They tried to kill us. Shadow's voice was flat. Yes. They were cops. Dirty cops. Different animal. Ryan's mind raced. Where are we going? Shadow looked at him. In the darkness, her eyes reflected moonlight. Hard. Determined. To the only person I know who has answers. Who? The man who commanded Vanguard 7. The man who knows what your father died for. She started the engine again. His name is James Fletcher, and if anyone knows how to fight a corrupt system, it's him. They rode on, into the storm, into the unknown. Behind them, the cabin burned. Ryan could see the glow even miles away. Everything Shadow owned. Gone. She didn't look back. Neither did Rebel. Warriors didn't look back. They moved forward, because forward was the only direction that mattered when the past was trying to kill you. The blizzard hit with the fury of something alive and angry. Wind screamed through pine forests, turning snow into horizontal needles that bit exposed skin and reduced visibility to arm's length. Temperature plummeted past 20 below. The kind of cold that made lungs burn and thoughts slow and mistakes fatal. Shadow drove like she was racing the devil himself. The snowmobile carved through drifts, engine howling, headlight beam swallowed by white chaos. Julia clung to her back face pressed against Shadow's jacket, trying to breathe without inhaling ice. In the cargo sled behind them, Rebel braced against the wind, body low, eyes scanning darkness for threats that might emerge from the storm. Ryan followed on the second machine, staying close to Shadow's taillight. His SEAL training had prepared him for cold water operations, for desert heat, for jungle humidity. But this Montana winter at its worst, this was different. Primal, unforgiving. They'd been riding for 40 minutes when Shadow's brake light flared red. She killed the engine. Silence rushed in, filled immediately by wind. Ryan pulled alongside. What's wrong? Shadow pointed ahead. Through the snow, barely visible, two sets of headlights. Trucks, blocking the logging road they'd been following. They cut us off. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The calm that came before violence. How many? Two vehicles. Assume 4 to 6 hostiles. Julia's teeth chattered. They can't know we're here. The storm. They knew which direction we ran. They know this terrain, and they have thermals. Shadow gestured to her own face. Body heat shows up clear as day through this weather if you have the right equipment. Ryan assessed. We can't go through them. No. Can we go around? Shadow considered. There's a creek bed, half-mile west, frozen over, but the ice might not hold the machines. And if we go on foot, in this weather, we'd have maybe an hour before hypothermia set in. Less for her. She nodded at Julia. They were trapped, enemies ahead, burning cabin behind, storm closing in from all sides. Ryan had been in worse situations. Not many, but some. What about Fletcher? How far to 10 miles northeast? If we can break through. Julia spoke up, voice shaking but determined. I have something in my laptop. Could buy us time. Shadow looked at her. What? The network frequency. Brooks's entire operation uses an encrypted radio channel. I intercepted it. If I broadcast on that frequency, everyone in the network hears it. Shadow's eyes narrowed, calculating, including anyone honest enough to respond. It's a risk. Everything's a risk right now. Shadow made a decision. Do it. Make it count. Julia pulled out the laptop, hands shaking from cold and adrenaline, powered it up. The screen glowed blue-white in the darkness, reflecting off snow like a beacon. She typed. Fast. Connected to a satellite uplink through Shadow's phone. Found the frequency. Then she took a breath and started recording. This is Detective Julia Brennan, badge number W-4729, Wyoming State Police. I am at GPS coordinates 47.23 north, 113.97 west. I am being pursued by corrupt law enforcement officers working for Sheriff Nathan Brooks of Montana County. I have evidence of a human trafficking operation spanning 3 states. 16 officers are involved. I have documentation, bank records, communications, manifests. I am requesting immediate federal response. FBI, U.S. Marshals, anyone clean. 14 women are being held at a hunting lodge 40 miles northeast of my position. Please, if anyone can hear this, help them. She repeated it twice, then uploaded files to the cloud. Everything. All of it. Then she hit broadcast. The message went out on Brooks's own network. Every dirty cop in 3 states would hear it, but so would anyone else monitoring the frequency. Shadow listened to the transmission, nodded once. Brave, stupid, but brave. Will it work? We'll find out. Through the storm, new engine sounds. The trucks ahead were moving, coming toward them. They heard it. Ryan's hand went to his weapon. Shadow was already turning her snowmobile. Creek bed, now. We risk the ice. They rode west, hard, fast, racing against hunters who knew these mountains as well as Shadow did. The creek bed appeared suddenly, a gash in the earth 30 feet across, frozen solid. Snow had drifted over it, making it look almost level with the surrounding terrain. Almost. Shadow didn't slow, hit the edge at full speed. The snowmobile went airborne for a heartbeat, then crashed down onto ice. The surface held, barely, cracks spiderwebbed out from the impact point. Go! 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 Shadow's voice cut through wind. Ryan followed. His machine hit ice. More cracks. The surface groaning under their weight. Behind them, headlights appeared at the creek's edge. The truck stopped. Men emerged, weapons visible even through the blizzard. Muzzle flash. Gunfire. Rounds stitched the ice behind them. Close. Too close. One bullet caught Julia's laptop case. She screamed, but kept holding on. They were halfway across when the ice gave way. Not completely, not catastrophically, but enough. Ryan's rear track broke through. The engine screamed as the snowmobile tilted back end, dropping into freezing water. He threw his weight forward, gunned the throttle. The machine lurched, tracks finding purchase on solid ice ahead. It pulled free in a spray of water and snow, but now his clothes were soaked, water already freezing in ice. Shadow saw. 2 minutes, then you're hypothermic. I know. They cleared the creek, climbed the far bank. The trucks couldn't follow, not without finding a bridge. That would buy them time. Not much, but some. Shadow led them into deep forest, following trails that existed only in memory. The snowmobiles bucked and slid over hidden obstacles. Branches whipped past. The world reduced to the small circle of headlight and the faith that Shadow knew where she was going. 10 minutes later, the trees opened up. A cabin appeared, larger than Shadow's, better maintained, lights burning in windows, smoke rising from a chimney despite the storm. A man stood on the porch, 70 years old if he was a day, white hair, ramrod posture, holding a rifle with the casual confidence of someone who knew how to use it. Shadow killed the engine. The man stared. then lowered his weapon. Margaret, I thought I'd never see you running toward trouble again. Hello, Fletcher. We have a situation. Colonel James Fletcher looked at Ryan, at Julia, at Rebel, then back to Shadow. I can see that. Get inside. You're bleeding. Shadow touched her side. Her hand came away red. She hadn't even noticed she'd been hit. Fletcher moved fast for a man his age. Had them inside in seconds. Doors locked. Windows covered. The interior was warm, military neat. Maps on the walls. Communications equipment that looked far too sophisticated for a retired officer. Fletcher pointed Ryan to a bathroom. Dry clothes into the cabinet. You've got maybe 5 minutes before shock sets in. Ryan went, stripped out of frozen gear, found thermal underwear, wool pants, a heavy sweater. All military issue. All his size. Fletcher had been expecting trouble. When Ryan emerged, Fletcher was treating Shadow's wound. A graze. Deep enough to bleed, but not life-threatening. You're getting slow in your old age, Fletcher said. I'm alive. That's fast enough. Julia sat by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, clutching her laptop like it was the only solid thing in the world. Rebel had positioned himself beside her. Guard mode. Despite his own injury, despite exhaustion, he was still working, still protecting. Fletcher finished with Shadow's bandage, looked at Ryan. You're Thomas Garrett's boy. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. You have his face, his posture. Fletcher's expression softened slightly. He was a good man, best handler I ever commanded. So I keep being told, but nobody will tell me what he died for. Fletcher and Shadow exchanged looks, some communication passing between them that didn't need words. Finally, Fletcher sighed. All right, you're neck deep in this now anyway. Might as well know the truth. He moved to a wall safe, opened it, pulled out a file folder, thick. Most pages stamped classified. This was declassified last month. Took me 37 years to get permission to release it. He dropped it on the table. Vanguard 7, the real story. Ryan opened it, started reading. His father's face stared back from a photo. Young, smiling, standing next to a German shepherd. Shadow stood beside him in the picture. 6 other handlers, 6 other dogs. The mission reports were detailed. Brutal, honest. Vanguard 7 had been created to handle operations too sensitive for regular military. Hostage rescue, tactical reconnaissance, asset extraction. The kind of work that couldn't fail because failure meant innocent people died. They'd operated for 11 years, 93 confirmed missions, 87 successful, 6 failures. The final failure was detailed in a report dated February 1987. Mission extract 8 women being held by a Soviet-backed smuggling operation near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Intelligence indicated minimal security, quick in and out. The intelligence was wrong. Someone had betrayed their position. The compound was reinforced, armed, waiting. 3 handlers died in the initial assault. 2 more died covering the retreat. One handler, Thomas Garrett, held the line while Shadow extracted 2 wounded teammates and 4 of the 8 women. He'd taken 17 bullets, survived long enough to see the extraction helicopter lift off. Then he died. The report ended with a single line: investigation into intelligence leak ongoing. Primary suspect unknown. Ryan looked up, his vision blurred. He blinked, realized he was crying. He saved 4 people. Shadow's voice was quiet. He saved 6. 2 of the wounded handlers lived. Your father bought them time. The investigation. Did they find who betrayed you? Fletcher's jaw tightened. No, the case was buried. Political pressure, national security, the usual excuses when someone powerful wants the truth to stay hidden. Who? We never knew for sure, but there were suspicions. Fletcher pulled out another document. This is from Soviet archives, released in 2023. It confirms there was a mole. Someone in U.S. intelligence fed information to the Soviets about our operations. Ryan's hands shook as he read. Do we know who? A senior officer in naval intelligence. Name was Richard Voss. He's been dead since 1992. The room felt colder somehow. His father had died because of betrayal, because someone had sold them out for reasons Ryan would never know, and the man responsible was beyond justice. The operation your father interrupted, Fletcher continued. It wasn't just Soviet smuggling. It was the beginning of a trafficking network that's been operating for 30 years. Julia looked up sharply. What? Fletcher turned to her. The compound in 1987. It was run by a man named Viktor Petrov, Soviet military, but his business partner was American, a sheriff from Montana named Robert Brooks. Julia's face went white. Nathan Brooks' father. The same. Robert built the American side of the network. When he died in 1995, his son Nathan took over, expanded it, made it more sophisticated, and he's been running it ever since. Shadow stood abruptly, paced. Energy that had nowhere to go. I tried to investigate after the mission, tried to find out who betrayed us. Every door I hit got slammed in my face. My career was destroyed. I was investigated for treason. 8 months of hell before they cleared me. By then, the trail was cold. The network had gone deep underground. She looked at Julia. 4 other Vanguard handlers died after 87, 2 in combat, 2 by suicide. I was the only one left. So I disappeared. Because fighting a system that could bury the truth that completely, I didn't have the strength anymore. Fletcher's radio crackled. He picked it up, listened. His expression darkened. We have movement, 3 vehicles. Coming up the mountain road. ETA 10 minutes. Shadow swore. They tracked us. How? Ryan demanded. We ditched the GPS tracker. Julia held up her laptop. The satellite uplink. If they have the right equipment, they can triangulate the signal. Shadow finished. Shut it down, now. Julia powered off the laptop, but the damage was done. Fletcher was already moving. I have a bunker, reinforced. Supplies for weeks. We can hold them off until what? Shadow's voice cut like a blade. Until they burn us out, until they call in more men. We're running out of ground to retreat to. Then what do you suggest? Shadow looked at the maps on Fletcher's wall, at the terrain, at the positions marked in red where Brooks's people had been spotted over the years. Her finger traced a line, stopped at a point 40 miles northeast, the hunting lodge. We stopped running. Ryan stared at her. That's suicide. You said yourself there are at least 12 guards, plus the women. We're 3 people with nothing left to lose. Shadow's eyes were hard, flinty. They've taken everything from me, my team, my career, my peace, and now my home. She looked at Julia. They took your sister. They took those women's freedom. She looked at Ryan. They took your father. Fletcher understood what she was proposing. Margaret, this is U.S. soil. We can't fight back, defend innocent people. Her voice rose. Decades of suppressed rage bleeding through. I followed the rules in 87, played by the book, and 6 good people died. I followed the rules after. Let the system handle it, and the system buried the truth. I'm done following rules written by people who don't care if we live or die. Silence. Then Ryan spoke. I'm in. Shadow turned. You don't know what you're agreeing to. I know my father died trying to stop these people. I know there are still operating. I know 14 women are in that lodge right now waiting for someone to save them. He met her eyes. I know this is what SEALs do. We find the bad guys. We eliminate the threat. We bring people home. Fletcher sighed, heavily. The sound of a man watching history repeat itself. You're both insane. Probably, Shadow almost smiled. You in my home. Fletcher looked at his maps, at his equipment, at the 2 warriors standing in his living room ready to throw themselves into a fight they'd probably lose. Someone has to keep you 2 idiots alive. He moved to his armory, started pulling weapons. But we do this smart, tactical, professional. This isn't a suicide run. It's a military operation. Agreed. Fletcher spread maps across his table. The lodge, here, 2 stories, 8 rooms, normally 6 guards on rotation. If they're moving the women tonight, like the detective said, there'll be more. Maybe 12, maybe 15. Weapons? Assume automatic, body armor, night vision. They're professional. So are we. Shadow studied the terrain. Approach from the north. Trees give us cover to within 200 yards. Then it's open ground. Ryan traced the route. That's a kill zone. We cross that we're exposed. Not if we use the storm. Visibility is maybe 50 feet. We can get close before they see us. And then, Shadow's finger tapped the map. High-low assault, same formation my team used in 87. Work then. It'll work now. Ryan saw what she was proposing. I take the roof, you take the ground floor. Fletcher provides overwatch and extraction coordination. What about me? Julia's voice, stronger now, determined. Shadow looked at her. You stay here. You're our insurance if we don't make it back. My sister is in that lodge. Julia stood, blankets falling away. I'm not sitting here while someone else saves her. You're hypothermic, untrained. You'll be a liability. I'm a cop. I've been through tactical training. I can shoot. And I know Emma's face. In the dark and chaos, you might not recognize her. I will. Shadow and Ryan exchanged looks. She has a point, Ryan said. Shadow considered. Fine, but you follow orders, no heroes. Your search and extraction only. You don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood. Understood, Fletcher interrupted. Before we plan an assault, we need to know current strength. I have a drone, thermal imaging. We can do reconnaissance without alerting them. Do it. While Fletcher prepped the drone, Shadow pulled Ryan aside. Your father's last mission. It was structured exactly like this. Undermanned, outgunned, rushing in to save people who were running out of time. And he died. Yes, but he also saved 4 women. 4 people who got to go home, who got to have lives, families, futures. She paused. Is that worth dying for? Ryan thought about it, really thought. He'd spent 16 years as a SEAL, run missions in a dozen countries, killed men who needed killing, saved people who deserved saving. But he'd never faced a question this direct, this personal. His father had answered it, had chosen to hold the line knowing it would probably kill him. Ryan made his choice. Yes, it's worth it. Shadow nodded, respect in her eyes. Then let's do it right. Let's finish what your father started. Fletcher returned. Drones up. Give me 10 minutes for a full pass. They waited, time stretching, each of them preparing in their own way. Shadow checked weapons, loaded magazines, moved with the muscle memory of 1,000 similar preparations. Ryan did the same. Mental checklist, objectives, contingencies, failure points. Julia held her laptop. All the evidence, all the proof. If they died tonight, at least the truth would survive. Rebel lay by the fire, resting, but his eyes were open, alert. He knew. Dogs always knew when violence was coming. Fletcher's monitor blinked. Got it. Switching to thermal. The screen showed the lodge in white-hot relief, heat signatures standing out against the cold background. Fletcher counted. 14 hostiles visible, 12 outside, 2 on the roof, and Jesus. What? Shadow moved to look. The second floor, a room on the west side, clustered heat signatures. Too many to count precisely. But at least a dozen. The women, all together, all accounted for. They haven't moved them yet, Julia breathed. They're still there. Fletcher zoomed in. 3 guards in the room with them. The rest are preparing trucks. Looks like they're planning to move them within the hour. Then we're out of time. Shadow straightened. We go now. Full assault. No stealth. We hit them hard and fast before they can react. Rules of engagement, Ryan asked. Shadow's voice was flat, cold. The voice of someone who'd made peace with necessary violence. Anyone with a gun is hostile. Anyone who tries to stop us is an enemy. We're not here to arrest them. We're here to end this. Fletcher handed out gear. Body armor, night vision, comms, weapons. Shadow took an M4 carbine, checked it with practiced efficiency. Ryan took a similar weapon. Julia got a pistol and strict orders to stay behind them. Rebel stood, moved to Shadow's side. She looked down at him. No, not this time. You're hurt. You stay. Rebel didn't move, just stared at her with those amber eyes that had seen as much combat as she had. I said stay. Rebel sat, but he didn't lie down, didn't relax. He'd obey. But he wouldn't like it. They geared up, checked equipment, synchronized watches. Fletcher would stay, monitor comms, coordinate extraction. Call in federal help once they had the women secured. Shadow, Ryan, and Julia would assault. 3 people against 14. Bad odds. But Ryan had fought worse. One thing, Shadow said as they prepared to leave. In there, when things go bad, and they will go bad, remember, the mission isn't revenge. It's rescue. We get those women out. Everything else is secondary. Ryan nodded. Understood. They moved to the door. Fletcher stopped them. Margaret, Thomas would be proud of what you're doing. Shadow's jaw tightened. Thomas would tell me I'm an idiot for trying this undermanned. Probably, but he'd still be proud. She almost smiled. Keep the line open. If we're not back in 2 hours, you'll be back. You're too stubborn to die. That's what everyone said in '87. She opened the door. Wind and snow rushed in. The storm had intensified. Whiteout conditions. Perfect for an assault. Perfect for dying in. They stepped into this blizzard. The door closed behind them, sealing them into the storm, into the mission, into the kind of situation where people either became heroes or became casualties. Ryan had always wondered what his father felt in those final moments, whether he'd been afraid, whether he'd regretted his choices. Now walking through snow toward a fight he might not survive, Ryan understood. His father hadn't been fearless. He'd just been willing to pay the cost. Some things were worth dying for. 14 women, innocent people, a sister, a legacy, Worth it. They disappeared into white chaos. Three warriors in a mission that would either redeem the past or become another tragedy buried in classified files. Behind them in Fletcher's cabin, rebels stood at the window, watching them go, every muscle tense, every instinct screaming to follow. But he obeyed, because that's what warriors did. They followed orders even when every fiber of their being wanted to fight. The night swallowed Shadow, Ryan, and Julia. The storm raged, and somewhere ahead, 14 women waited for a miracle they didn't know was coming. The world was white and black and red, white from snow that fell so thick it erased horizons, black from night pressing down like a physical weight, and red would come later. Red always came during assaults. Shadow led them through terrain that would kill most people within an hour. The temperature had dropped to 30 below. Wind chill pushed it lower. Exposed skin would freeze in minutes. Lungs burned with each breath, the kind of cold that made thoughts sluggish and fingers clumsy, and mistakes inevitable. But Shadow moved like the storm was an old friend, like she'd walked these mountains 1,000 times in conditions just as brutal. Maybe she had. Ryan didn't know her full history. Didn't know what mission she'd run in the 11 years between joining Vanguard and watching his father die. All he knew was that she navigated darkness and blizzard without hesitation, following landmarks invisible to anyone else. A bent tree here, an outcropping there. The subtle change in terrain that marked a game trail versus a drainage ditch. They'd left the snowmobiles 2 miles back. Too loud, too obvious. This last stretch had to be on foot. Julia struggled. Her hypothermia had been treated but not cured. She was running on adrenaline and desperation. Ryan could hear her breathing, too fast, too shallow. She wouldn't last long in a firefight. But she kept moving, kept following. Because somewhere ahead, her sister waited in a room with armed men who saw her as property. That kind of motivation pushed people past physical limits. Ryan knew, he'd seen it in combat. Soldiers who ran on broken legs to save a teammate. Mothers who lifted cars off children. The human body could do impossible things when the mind refused to accept failure. Shadow's hand went up. Stop signal. They froze. Through the snow, barely visible lights appeared. Yellow rectangles floating in white chaos. Windows. The hunting lodge. They'd arrived. Shadow dropped to one knee, pulled night vision goggles down. Ryan did the same. The world shifted to green-gray clarity. Thermal overlay showed heat signatures. Guards. More than Fletcher's drone had shown. At least 16 now. Maybe 18. Hard to count with them moving. They're loading trucks. Shadow's voice was barely audible over wind. 3 vehicles. Industrial cargo vans. Blacked out windows. They're moving the women soon. Ryan scanned. I count 6 outside. Rest must be inside. Roof access. 2 hostiles. North corner. Thermal shows they're cold. Been up there a while. They'll be slow. Fingers numb. Reaction time delayed. Shadow considered. That's our entry point. Julia spoke up. What about the women? If shooting starts, it'll start whether we want it to or not. Shadow turned to look at her. Once we breach, you get to that second floor room. You find your sister. You get all of them ready to move. Understand, how will I want them? When you hear gunfire, that's your signal, not before. Ryan calculated approach vectors. 200 yards of open ground. Even in this storm, they'll see us if we rush. We don't rush. We walk. Shadow adjusted her weapon. Confident, like we belong, like we're part of their team. In this weather with thermal showing, they won't be able to identify faces until we're close. By then, it's too late. It was insane, walking straight into an armed camp pretending to be friendly. It was also exactly the kind of tactic that worked. Because humans expected threats to look like threats, not like 3 people strolling through a blizzard. Comms check. Shadow touched her earpiece. Fletcher's voice crackled through. Reading you clear. Drone shows increased activity. They're accelerating the timeline. Copy. We're going in. Maintain overwatch. If we don't signal within 30 minutes, I'll burn the whole mountain down to get you out. Fletcher's voice was granite. Good hunting, Shadow. Shadow stood. Remember, roof first, then interior. We clear room by room. Anyone armed is hostile. Anyone who surrenders gets zip-tied and left. We're not here to take prisoners, but we're not executing anyone either. Ryan nodded. Military rules of engagement. Even in chaos, there were lines. On my lead. They walked. Out of the trees, into the open. 3 figures in tactical gear moving through a blizzard toward a building where men with guns waited. Ryan's heart hammered. Every instinct screamed to find cover. To move tactical, low and fast. But Shadow walked upright. Casual. Like she owned the ground beneath her feet. 50 yards, 40, 30. A guard near the trucks turned, looked at them. Thermal signatures showed him raising something. Binoculars, maybe. Or a weapon. Shadow kept walking. The guard lowered whatever he'd raised, turned back to the trucks. They'd bought it. 3 more workers in the storm. Nothing suspicious. 20 yards. Ryan could see details now even through snow. The lodge was bigger than he'd expected. 2 full stories. Addition on the west side. Multiple entry points, but most were blocked by guards or vehicles. The roof, their only realistic option. Shadow angled toward the north side where fire escapes climbed to the roof access. The 2 guards Fletcher had spotted would be up there. Cold, miserable, wanting this shift to end. They'd get their wish, just not the way they expected. 10 yards from the building, a voice called out, "Hey, you 3!" They stopped. A guard approached, bundled against weather, rifle slung, flashlight cutting through snow. "You with the new crew," Brooks said. "You weren't arriving until—" Shadow moved. No hesitation, no warning. One moment standing still, next moment the guard was on the ground. Shadow's knife buried in his throat. His flashlight falling, beams spinning across snow. She caught it before it hit, clicked it off, lowered the body quietly. "Roof, now!" Her voice was ice. They ran up the fire escape, metal slick with ice. Ryan went first, Shadow behind him. Julia bringing up rear. The 2 roof guards heard them coming, started to turn. Ryan shot the first, suppressed M4 coughing twice, center mass. The guard dropped without a sound. The second guard got his weapon up, fired, unsuppressed. The gunshot cracked like thunder. Shadow shot him. 3 rounds. He fell backward off the roof, body disappearing into snow below. So much for stealth. Ryan moved to the roof access door, locked. Shadow pulled a breaching charge, small, shaped. The kind of thing that would blow a lock without collapsing a building. Clear. They stepped back. She triggered it. The explosion was small, controlled. But in the quiet of the storm, it sounded like artillery. Every guard in the compound would know they were under attack now. The door blew inward, smoke, darkness. Ryan went through first, training taking over. Weapon up, scanning, stairwell, empty, stairs leading down, voices below, shouting, boots on floor. The sound of men grabbing weapons and moving to contact. "Julia, 2nd floor, find the women. We'll clear the ground." Julia split off, disappeared down a hallway. Ryan and Shadow descended, 2 warriors moving as one. He took left, she took right. Overlapping fields of fire, professional, practiced. First hostile appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Ryan shot him. 2 rounds, Mozambique drill, 2 center mass, 1 head. The man fell. Second hostile came from the right. Shadow's M4 barked. 3-round burst. Another body. They cleared the stairwell, moved into the main room. Chaos. Guards scrambling, some armored, some not, and all armed. A dozen men moving in confused panic, trying to identify where the threat was coming from. Shadow and Ryan didn't give them time. They moved through the room like violence personified. Shooting, moving, reloading, each round deliberate, each target confirmed. Return fire came. Unsuppressed rifles in enclosed space. Deafening. Bullets punching through walls, shattering windows, tearing furniture apart. Ryan felt something hot streak past his head. Inches. If he'd been a fraction slower turning, no time to think about it. He dropped a guard trying to flank. Shadow shot 2 more trying to reach the stairs. Then they heard it. A voice. Amplified, angry. "Stand down. All of you stand down. They're just 3 people. The remaining guards hesitated, looked toward the voice. A man emerged from a back room. 50-something, silver hair, sheriff's uniform, clean, pressed, looking completely out of place in the carnage. Nathan Brooks. Shadow's weapon tracked to him. "It's over, Brooks. Federal agents are already on their way. You're done." Brooks smiled, actually smiled. "Am I, because I count 7 of my men down? You've killed law enforcement officers on U.S. soil. Even if you had authorization, which you don't, you just murdered peace officers. Dirty cops aren't peace officers. Prove it. In court. With evidence. Through a system I've controlled for 30 years. His smile widened. "You think you're the first to try this. Others have tried. They died, or disappeared, or learned to keep quiet." Ryan spoke. "The detective already uploaded everything to federal servers. Your bank records, your communications, your entire operation." For the first time, Brooks' smile faltered. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Shadow's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're about to find out." Brooks moved fast for a man his age, dove behind cover, shouted, "Kill them, all of them." The remaining guards opened fire. Ryan and Shadow scattered, finding cover, returning fire. The lodge interior became a war zone, bullets everywhere, wood splintering, glass shattering, the smell of gunpowder and blood. Upstairs, Julia heard the firefight, knew it meant go. She ran down the hallway. Found the door Fletcher's drone had identified, locked from outside. She shot the lock, kicked the door open. 14 women stared at her, young, terrified, some barely more than girls. "I'm Detective Julia Brennan, Wyoming State Police. I'm getting you out." No one moved. Fear had paralyzed them. Julia scanned faces, looking for one. Just one. There. Blonde. 21. Scar over left eyebrow. Thinner than Julia remembered. Bruised, but alive. Emma. Her sister looked up. Recognition dawning. Then tears. "Jules." "Oh God." "Jules." They embraced. Brief, desperate. Then Julia pulled back. "We have to move. Now. All of you. Follow me. Stay close. Don't stop for anything." The women stood, hesitant. Then one moved. Then another. Survival instinct overriding terror. Julia led them into the hallway. 14 women. Some could barely walk. Others helped them. A chain of survivors moving toward freedom. They made it to the stairs when a guard appeared below. Saw them. Raised his weapon. Julia shot first. 2 rounds. The guard fell. Behind her, Emma screamed. The other women scattered. Panic spreading. "Stay together, move." They descended, Julia leading. Weapon up. Every shadow a threat. They reached the ground floor. The firefight had moved to the back of the lodge. Opportunity. "Front door, go." She pushed them forward. Through smoke. Through case. Toward the exit that meant life. Downstairs, Ryan was bleeding. Shoulder wound. Through and through. Hurt like hell, but he could still fight. Shadow had taken a round to her vest. Cracked ribs at minimum. She moved slower. Each breath visible pain. But they'd reduced the hostile count. Maybe 4 guards left. Plus Brooks. "We need to finish this." Shadow reloaded. "I'll push left. You push right. We box them in." Ryan nodded. "On 3. They moved. Combat ballet, each covering the other, advancing, shooting, moving. 2 more guards down. Then Brooks appeared. Not fighting, running. Toward the back door. Escape. Shadow saw him. "You don't get to run." She chased. Ryan followed. They burst out the back door into the blizzard. Brooks was 20 yards ahead, running for the tree line. For a vehicle hidden there. Shadow raised her weapon. Fired. Missed. Wind throwing off her aim. Brooks reached the trees. Turned. Weapon in hand. He fired. 5 shots, rapid, uncontrolled. One found its mark. Shadow went down hard. Snow spraying. Red blooming across white. "No." Ryan ran to her. Skidded to his knees. Blood. Too much blood. Hid in the leg. High thigh. Femoral area. "Brooks, don't let him." Ryan looked up. Brooks was climbing into a truck, engine starting. Ryan made a choice. He grabbed Shadow, threw her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, started running back to the lodge. Each step agony, his shoulder screaming. Shadow's weight threatening to collapse him. But he ran because that's what SEALs did. No man left behind. He made it inside. Laid Shadow on the floor, pressure on the wound, hard. Both hands, her blood hot against his skin. She was pale, going into shock, lips gray. "Stay with me. You hear me? You don't get to die. Not after everything." Her eyes focused on him, struggling. "Your father, I couldn't save him. I couldn't." "You saved 4 people that day. You saved 14 today. That's enough. That has to be enough." Her hand found his, squeezed weakly. Tell them Thomas died a hero. You'll tell them yourself. Stay with me, Shadow. That's an order." Outside, the truck engine revved, Brooks escaping into the storm. Then a new sound cut through the blizzard. Different engine. Deeper. Diesel. Multiple vehicles. Ryan looked through the shattered window. 3 black SUVs tore up the mountain road. Federal plates, spotlight sweeping, moving fast despite conditions. FBI, Julia's broadcast had worked. The lead vehicle cut off Brooks's truck. Agents emerged, weapons drawn, tactical gear, professional. Brooks tried to run, made it 10 feet before a German shepherd hit him from behind like a guided missile. Drove him face first into snow, jaws locked on his arm. Not just any dog, rebel. He disobeyed Shadow's order to stay, followed them through the storm, tracked them across miles of wilderness. Arrived just in time. The shepherd held Brooks down. Not biting harder, not necessary, just holding. Waiting for the humans to catch up, agents swarmed, secured Brooks, read him his rights. Only then did Rebel release. He limped toward the lodge, moving on three legs. The old shrapnel scar on his left flank had reopened during his run through the mountains, fresh blood mixing with old scars. But his eyes were bright, alert, mission complete. The FBI agents entered the lodge, tactical, efficient, taking control of a scene that looked like a war zone. Agent Patricia Donovan came through first. 52, hard eyes, gray hair pulled back severe, voice that expected obedience and got it. "Who's in command here?" Ryan looked up from where he pressed bandages to Shadow's leg. "That would be her. Handler designation Shadow. She's critical. Needs medevac now." Donovan assessed the scene. Bodies, blood, 14 women huddled near the front door with Julia standing guard. Spent brass casings everywhere. Bullet holes in every surface. "Paramedics are 2 minutes out." She keyed her radio. "I need medical. Multiple casualties. Priority 1 GSW to femoral, and get me a status on those women." She looked at Ryan, took in his shoulder wound, his tactical gear, his weapon. "You're Lieutenant Garrett, Naval Special Warfare." "Yes, ma'am." "You just assaulted a facility on U.S. soil, killed multiple law enforcement officers. Want to explain?" Shadow's hand grabbed Donovan's ankle, weak grip but determined. "Those weren't officers, they were criminals, in uniform. Detective Brennan has all the evidence. Check her laptop." Donovan looked at Julia. "Is this true?" Julia nodded, pulled out the laptop. Water damaged but functional, handed it over. "Everything. Bank records, communications, manifests, 30 years of operations, 16 officers on Brooks's payroll, plus judges, politicians. It's all there." Donovan scrolled. Her expression darkened with each screen. Jesus Christ. Paramedics arrived. Combat medics, ex-military from the way they moved. They saw Shadow's wound and didn't waste time talking. IV line in, pressure dressings, loading her onto a stretcher. Shadow grabbed Ryan's hand, squeezed. "Your father, he'd be proud. So would your team." She almost smiled. Then the paramedics wheeled her out into the storm, into a medevac helicopter that had landed despite conditions that should have grounded it. Rebel tried to follow, limped toward the door. Ryan stopped him. "Easy, boy, you did well. Rest now." The dog looked at him, amber eyes holding intelligence that went beyond training. Then he lay down, accepted that his part was done. Julia was with the women, speaking softly, reassuring them. They were being triaged. Medical checks, blankets, hot liquids. The beginning of a long road to recovery. Emma stayed close to Julia, wouldn't let go of her sister's hand. Trauma made people cling to what was safe. Donovan continued scrolling through the laptop, finally looked up. "This is going to blow up. Multiple states, federal corruption. This goes all the way to state senators." "How high?" Ryan asked. "High enough that you three might have just started a war." She closed the laptop. "But you also saved 14 women, exposed a trafficking network that's operated for 3 decades. So there's that." She moved to Brooks, still handcuffed, sitting in the back of an SUV. Ryan followed. Brooks sat with his face pressed against window glass, watching his empire collapse in real time. Agents photographing everything, collecting evidence, reading rights to his men who'd survived. Donovan opened the door. "Sheriff Brooks, you're under arrest for human trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, murder, and about 60 other charges we're still counting." Brooks looked at her, no fear in his eyes, just cold calculation. "You think you won this network has existed for 30 years. You think I'm the only one? You think taking me down ends anything?" Shadow appeared behind Donovan, walking, barely, supported by a paramedic who'd given up trying to make her stay on the stretcher. "No," Shadow's voice was weak but clear. "I think it's a start." Brooks saw her, something flickered across his face, maybe recognition, maybe respect. "You're the one from 87, Shadow. I remember now. My father talked about you, said you were the one who got away." "I didn't get away. I survived. There's a difference." "Your teammate didn't. Thomas Garrett." Brooks smiled, cruel. "I remember him. Screamed when my father's men shot him. Begged for his life." Ryan's hand moved to his weapon. Shadow stopped him with a look. "He's lying, trying to provoke you." Brooks leaned forward. "Am I—" "Ask her. She was there. She heard him beg." Shadow's voice was ice. "Thomas Garrett died silent, holding the line, giving his team time to escape. Your father wasn't there. You weren't there. You know nothing about how brave men die." She leaned closer. close enough that only Brooks could hear her next words. But you're about to learn how cowards live. In a cell, forgotten, while every woman you took gets to go home, gets to have a life, gets to be free. And every day you sit in that cell, you'll know that an old woman and a seal you underestimated destroyed everything you built. Brooks's mask cracked, rage flashing through. I'll be out in 5 years. Lawyers, connections. I know how. Shadow slammed the door, walked away. The conversation was over. Brooks shouted through gliss, words lost to wind and distance and the fact that he no longer mattered. Donovan watched Shadow limp back toward the paramedics. She shouldn't be walking. Try telling her that, Ryan said. You did good work tonight. All of you. Illegal as hell. But good. What happens now? Now, Donovan gestured to the scene. We process, investigate, prosecute. This is going to take years, but those women are safe. That's what matters. She looked at Ryan. As for you, you violated about a dozen federal laws, assaulted a facility, killed 7 men, used military weapons on domestic soil without authorization. Ryan waited for the hammer to fall. But those men were corrupt. Those women needed rescue. And you followed the evidence where it led. She paused. I'll recommend no charges. What you did was illegal. But it was also right. Sometimes those aren't the same thing. Relief flooded through him. Not for himself, for Shadow, for Julia. They'd gone outside the law, but for the right reasons. Thank you, ma'am. Donovan walked away, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts and Rebel. The dog had fallen asleep. Finally, body relaxed, safe. Ryan sat beside him, let exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline was fading, pain rushing in to replace it. Fletcher's voice crackled through the comm still in Ryan's ear. Lieutenant, Shadow's stable. Femoral was nicked, but they got it. She'll live. Copy. The women? All 14 secured. Medical says they're malnourished and traumatized, but they'll survive. They're going home. Good. That's good. You did well, son. Your father would be proud. Ryan's throat tightened. Couldn't respond. Just clicked the mic twice. Acknowledgement. He sat there as medics worked, as FBI agents processed the scene, as the storm finally began to break, as dawn began to gray the eastern sky. 14 women safe. A trafficking network destroyed. Justice served. But the cost, always a cost. 7 men dead by his hand in Shadow's. Shadow critical. His own injuries. The trauma those women would carry forever. Was it worth it? He looked at Emma and Julia holding each other, at the women being loaded into ambulances with blankets and hope, at the evidence being collected that would lead to dozens more arrests. Yes, it was worth it. His father had understood that, had paid the ultimate price believing it. Now Ryan understood too. Some things were worth fighting for, worth bleeding for, worth the nightmares that would come. Freedom, justice, innocent lives, those things mattered more than rules, more than regulations, more than careers. They mattered because without them, nothing else did. Ryan closed his eyes, let the exhaustion take him. Safe for the first time in hours. Beside him, Rebel's breathing was steady, deep. The breathing of a warrior finally at rest. Act 3. Resolution. The hospital room was too white, too bright, too sterile. Shadow lay in the bed looking smaller than she had in the field. IVS in both arms, monitors beeping steady rhythms, her leg elevated, bandaged from hip to knee. Ryan sat in the chair beside her, had been there for 6 hours. Since they'd brought her out of surgery, the doctor had been blunt. The femoral artery was nicked, not severed. She's lucky. Another inch and she'd have bled out in minutes. As it is, she'll need physical therapy, months of it. She might walk with a limp. Shadow had told the doctor where he could shove his pessimism. Now she was sleeping. Finally, fighting the sedatives the whole way down because that's who she was, a woman who didn't surrender even to medical necessity. Julia appeared in the doorway, clean clothes, showered, but her eyes were still haunted. That would take time to fade. How was she stable? Tough as nails, arguing with doctors. Julia almost smiled. Emma's in room 304. They're keeping her for observation. Hypothermia, malnutrition, but she'll recover. Good. Julia sat in the other chair. They sat in silence for a while. 2 people who'd been through hell together, the kind of bond that didn't need words. Agent Donovan wants to talk to us, Julia said eventually. She has information about the network, about what we uncovered. Can it wait? She said it's important. Shadow's eyes opened. Then let's hear it. She was awake, had been listening. Donovan entered, carrying a tablet and a file folder. She pulled up a chair. The laptop you gave us. We've been analyzing it for the past 8 hours. What we found. She paused, choosing words carefully. This is bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Shadow's voice was rough from intubation. 16 officers arrested last night, but the network includes 47 more across 6 states, judges, prosecutors, politicians, even a U.S. Marshal. The number hung in the air. We're looking at RICO charges. Federal conspiracy. This is going to dominate headlines for months, years. The women, Julia asked. How many total? 19 confirmed, 14 from the lodge, 5 from secondary locations we rated based on Brooks's records. Donovan's expression softened slightly. They're all receiving counseling, medical treatment. Most are with family now. Some entered witness protection. They're safe, Shadow said. Not a question, a requirement. They're safe. Then it was worth it. Donovan opened the file folder. There's something else. We found records, old records, from 1987. Shadow tensed. Ryan saw it in the way her hand gripped the bed rail. Soviet archives, fully declassified 6 months ago. Details about the ambush, about the betrayal, about what happened to Vanguard 7. She pulled out documents. The mole was a naval intelligence officer named Richard Voss. He fed information to the Soviets for money. Your team's position, your mission parameters, everything. Ryan's hands clenched. Is he alive? No, died in 1992, heart attack, but the files prove it. Your father and his team were sold out, ambushed, killed because someone chose money over honor. The words should have brought closure, should have provided answers. Instead, they just made the loss feel heavier. There's more. Donovan pulled out photographs. Recent, color, 4 middle-aged women, smiling, surrounded by families, children, grandchildren. The 4 women your team saved in 1987, we tracked them all alive, all safe. They wanted me to give you this. She handed Shadow an envelope. Shadow's hands shook as she opened it. Inside were letters, 4 of them, handwritten. She read the first silently, then the second. By the third, tears were falling. Ryan watched her face, saw something break, something heal. All at once. What do they say? He asked quietly. Shadow's voice cracked. Thank you. They say thank you. She looked up, eyes wet. One of them named her daughter after me. Another became a doctor. They have families, grandchildren, lives. She held up one letter, hand trembling. This one. She was 19, pregnant. She says your father held the line while I carried her to the helicopter. She heard him shout, go get them out. She heard the gunfire that killed him. Shadow looked at Ryan, really looked at him. She wants you to know her daughter is 37 now. A doctor, 3 children because of your father, because he refused to leave them behind. Ryan couldn't speak. His throat had closed. 37 years. His father had been dead longer than Ryan had been alive. But his father's sacrifice had given life, had created futures, had mattered in ways that could be measured in generations. Thank you, he managed, for showing me. Donovan stood. There's going to be a ceremony in 3 months. Washington. They want to honor Vanguard 7. Publicly. All 7 handlers, including the ones who died. Your father included. Ryan looked at Shadow. Will you go? I don't know if I can, physically. Then I'll carry you if I have to. She almost smiled. Deal. Donovan left them with the files, the letters, the photographs. Proof that sacrifice wasn't wasted. That heroism mattered. That good people fighting evil could win even when it cost everything. Later, after Julia had gone to be with Emma, Ryan sat alone with Shadow. I spent 30 years angry at a ghost, he said. Angry that my father chose the mission over coming home, over being there. And now I understand. He didn't choose the mission over me. He chose saving 4 women who couldn't save themselves. He chose doing the right thing even when it cost everything. Ryan paused. I would have made the same choice. Did make the same choice last night. Shadow nodded. That's what it means to be Vanguard. Not the unit designation, not the call sign. It means standing between evil and innocence. It means being willing to pay the cost. Is the cost always this high? Usually, good people die in these fights. They die scared and in pain and far from home. But they die knowing it mattered. That's the trade. Ryan thought about that. Is it worth it? Shadow looked at the photographs. The 4 women, the families, the lives that existed because 7 handlers and 7 dogs had refused to quit. Ask them. Later that evening, Julia brought Emma to meet Shadow. Emma moved carefully, still healing. Physical wounds were closing, but the other kind took longer. She stood at the foot of Shadow's bed, trembling slightly. I wanted to say thank you for coming for us, for not giving up. Shadow studied her, saw a young woman who'd been broken but was rebuilding, who'd been stolen but was reclaiming herself. You don't need to thank me, you survived. That took more courage than anything I did. Jules says you were a handler, that you had a dog. I did, many dogs, over many years. Emma's voice dropped. Is Rebel okay? He saved us. When that guard tried to shoot Jules, Rebel put himself between us. Ryan spoke up. He's at a veterinary hospital. They're treating his wounds. Old injury reopened, but he'll be okay. Can I visit him when he's better? Shadow and Ryan exchanged looks. I think he'd like that, Shadow said. He's good at helping people heal. Emma nodded, tears starting. Julia put an arm around her. Come on, you need rest. They left. Two sisters, two survivors, two people who would carry scars but wouldn't let them define everything. Ryan watched them go. She'll be okay. Eventually, trauma doesn't heal overnight, but she has her sister. She has hope. That's more than most get. 14 women, 14 Emmas, all going home. 19 total. Don't forget the 5 from secondary locations. 19 then. 19 lives saved because we refused to walk away. Shadow closed her eyes, exhausted. Your father saved 4. We saved 19. Together, that's 23. 23 people who get to have futures. 23 families who get to be whole. Is that your legacy? It's our legacy, yours, mine, your father's, Vanguard's, all of us. She drifted off, sleep taking her. Ryan stayed, keeping watch, because that's what warriors did for each other. Outside, the Montana night was clear. Stars visible, no storm, no chaos, just peace for now. Act 3. 6 months later, the Montana sky was impossibly blue. No clouds, no storms, just endless blue stretching to horizons sharp enough to cut. Ryan stood on the porch of Shadow's rebuilt cabin. The fire had destroyed the original, but she'd rebuilt. Same location, same layout, different wood, fresh start. She sat in a chair beside him, legs still in a brace, though she needed it less now. Physical therapy 3 times a week was working. The doctors said she'd walk without a limp within the year. Shadow said they were still overly optimistic, but she was proving them wrong. Rebel lay between them, gray creeping into his muzzle, moving slower. But his eyes were still bright, still alert, still a warrior. How many arrests now? Shadow asked. 47 total, across 6 states. FBI says they're still finding connections. Could go higher. Brooks, arraigned on 63 counts, federal trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, murder. His trial starts next month. Prosecution says it's the most airtight case they've ever seen. Shadow nodded, satisfied. He'll die in prison. Yes, ma'am. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came after shared trauma, after fighting together, after surviving together. A vehicle appeared on the road, unmarked sedan. 2 people emerged, Julia and Emma. They climbed the porch steps. Emma moved easier now. 6 months of therapy had helped, physical and mental. She'd never be the same person she was before. Trauma changed people, but she was building a new version of herself. Hey. Julia's greeting was casual, but her eyes were warm. Thought we'd visit before we head out. Where are you going? Ryan asked. Denver. Emma got accepted into a victim advocacy program. She starts next week. Emma knelt beside Rebel. The dog's tail thumped. He remembered her. Dogs always remembered the people they'd saved. Hey boy, you look good. Rebel licked her hand, gentle, like he understood she still needed gentleness. Emma looked up at Shadow. I wanted to thank you again, before I left, for giving me my life back. Shadow's expression softened. You gave yourself your life back. I just opened a door. You walked through it. I know what you did, what you risked. I'll never forget. Good, don't forget, but don't let it define everything either. You're more than what happened to you. Emma nodded, understanding dawning. I'm going to help others, people like me, people who need someone to believe them when they say something's wrong. That's good work, important work. Julia spoke up. I made detective lieutenant, youngest in Wyoming State Police history. Congratulations. They want me to lead a task force, human trafficking investigations, multi-state coordination. I said yes. Shadow smiled, actually smiled. Your sister must be proud. She is, Julia glanced at Emma. We both are, of each other. They stayed for an hour, talking, sharing updates, building connections that would last beyond the trauma that had brought them together. When they left, Emma hugged Shadow, careful of her leg. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Now go build something good. They drove away. Two survivors, two fighters, two people who'd taken broken pieces and made something new. Ryan watched them disappear down the road. She's going to be okay. They both are. They're strong, and they have each other. Another vehicle appeared. Black SUV, federal plates. Agent Donovan emerged, carrying a folder and a small box. She climbed the porch, nodded to Shadow and Ryan. Thought you'd want to see this. She opened the folder. Newspaper articles. Headlines. Brooks Trafficking Network dismantled. 47 arrested. Decades of corruption exposed in multi-state investigation. 19 women rescued in FBI raid. And smaller stories. Follow-ups. Victim advocacy programs see surge in funding. New federal task force created to combat trafficking. Montana enacts stronger protections for missing persons. Shadow read through them, expression unreadable. All because we kicked down one door, Ryan said. All because you refused to walk away. Donovan pulled out another document. There's more. Investigation expanded based on Brooks's records. We've identified 34 additional victims. 12 are still alive. We're working on reunification. The numbers kept growing, each one representing a life, a family, a future the stolen and potentially returned. Donovan opened the small box. Inside were medals, military commendations. These are for you, both of you. Official recognition for services rendered, to be presented at a ceremony in Washington next month. Shadow stared at the medals like they were foreign objects. I don't need medals. No, but the families of the people you saved need to give them to you. It's part of their healing, knowing that good people fought for them. Ryan took his medal, Bronze Star, for valor. Shadow took hers, same. Will you come to the ceremony, Donovan asked. They want both of you there. And they want to honor Vanguard 7, all 7 handlers, publicly, for the first time. Shadow looked at Ryan. Will you help me get there? I'll carry you if I have to. She smiled. You might have to. Donovan left them with the articles, the medals, the proof that their fight had mattered beyond just one night in one lodge. I requested a transfer, Ryan said after a while, to the FBI's counter-trafficking K-9 unit, joint task force with multiple agencies. They approve it. Yes, I start next month, after the ceremony. Your CO, he said. Ryan smiled slightly. He said my father would be proud. Shadow's expression softened. He would be. You finished his mission, extended it, made it bigger. We finished it, together. Yes, together. Rebel stood, stretched, limped to the edge of the porch, looked out over the mountains. What do you think he sees? Ryan asked. Peace, finally. Or maybe the next mission. Shadow chuckled, low, rough. Always another mission. Evil doesn't stop. It just changes forms. Then we'll be ready. Will we? I'm 72, half crippled. You're one man, rebels aging. We're not exactly a tactical strike force anymore. Ryan leaned forward. I've been thinking about that. What if we train others, pass on what we know? The old methods, the Vanguard way. Shadow turned to look at him, interest sparking. What are you proposing? Unofficial mentoring. You teach the handlers I identify. The ones who show promise. Who care more about the mission than the medals. We train them the way Fletcher trained you. The way you trained others. A new generation of Vanguard. Not exactly, but something. A continuation of the legacy. So that what your team started doesn't die with us. Shadow considered. Looked out at the mountains. At the training yard where she'd spent decades teaching dogs to save lives. I'm in, but we do it right. No publicity, no official channels. Just good handlers learning from someone who's been there. Ryan extended his hand. Deal. They shook. A compact, a promise. A continuation of something that started 48 years ago when 7 handlers and 7 dogs decided some fights were worth fighting. The afternoon stretched long. Golden light painting the mountains. Ryan's phone buzzed. Text message from Fletcher. Ceremony details confirmed, May 15th. Arlington, full military honors for all 7 Vanguard handlers. Families invited. Press will be there. You ready for that? Ryan showed Shadow the message. She read it, jaw tightening. I haven't seen those families since the funerals. Some of them blame me. for surviving when their loved ones didn't. Do you blame yourself? Long pause. Every day, for 37 years. Every single day. Maybe it's time to stop. How Ryan pulled out the letters from the four women, the ones they'd saved in 1987. Shadow had kept them. Read them when the guilt got too heavy. Because of this, because your team, your sacrifice, your survival, your guilt, it saved four people. Who built families? Who lived? That's worth carrying the weight. Shadow took the letters, ran her fingers over the handwriting. One of them will be at the ceremony, Ryan said. She reached out through Donovan. She wants to meet you, to say thank you in person. I don't know if I can handle that. You can. You're the toughest person I know. Shadow folded the letters carefully. All right, I'll go, but you're not leaving my side. Wouldn't dream of it. They sat until sunset, watching the light change, the shadows lengthen, the day transitioned to night. Rebel came back to lie between them. Mission complete. Rest earned. Tell me about your father, Shadow said suddenly. Not as a soldier, as a person. What do you remember? I don't remember much. I was barely one when he died. But my mother, before she destroyed everything, she used to tell me stories. He loved woodworking, built furniture in his spare time, said it kept his hands busy, kept his mind from dwelling on the missions. He was good at it, made a cradle for you before you were born, brought photos to show the team. Ryan's throat tightened. I never knew that. He talked about you constantly, worried about missing your childhood, about you growing up without knowing him. But he believed in the mission, believed some things were worth the sacrifice. Was he right? Shadow looked at him. 4 women are alive because of him. 19 more are alive because you followed in his footsteps. You tell me. Ryan nodded slowly. He was right. Yes, he was. The stars emerged, one by one, pinpricks of light in infinite darkness. Shadow spoke quietly. I'm thinking of writing it down. All of it. Vanguard 7, the missions, the losses, the wins. So it doesn't get lost. So people know what happened. Will they declassify enough for you to do that? Donovan says yes. Most of it's coming out anyway. Might as well control the narrative. I'll help, fill in the gaps, tell my father's side. Thank you. They stayed on the porch until the cold drove them inside, until Rebel's shivering made it clear they needed warmth. Inside, Shadow made coffee. Strong, black, the kind that tasted like memories and determination. Ryan built up the fire, wood catching, flame spreading, heat pushing back the cold. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 warriors, 1 dog. Safe for the moment, but ready, because readiness was what separated the living from the dead, the victors from the victims. Tomorrow they'd start training the next generation, teaching young handlers the old ways, passing on knowledge earned in blood and pain and loss. Tomorrow the mission would continue. But tonight they could rest. Rebel's breathing was deep and steady. Sleep of a warrior finally at peace. Shadow dozed in her chair. Guard finally down. Ryan kept watch. Because someone always had to. That's how teams worked. How families worked. How warriors survived. Outside, the Montana night was infinite and clear. Stars visible for forever. No storm clouds gathering. No threats incoming. Just peace. For now. And for warriors who'd spent lifetimes fighting, for now was enough. Epilogue, 3 years later. Arlington National Cemetery was green and quiet and heavy with the weight of sacrifice. Ryan stood before 7 new headstones, polished marble, names engraved, dates, service records. Vanguard 7, Handler Raptor. Christopher Wade, 1954 to 1987. Handler Sentinel. Marcus Chen, 1951 to 1987. Handler Ghost. Thomas Garrett, 1953 to 1987. Handler Falcon. David Martinez, 1955 to 1988. Handler Phoenix. Robert Taylor, 1952 to 1989. Handler Storm. James Wilson, 1956 to 1990. Handler Shadow. Margaret Thorne, 1952 to 2027. The last stone was the newest, dedicated 6 months ago. Shadow had lived 3 more years after that night at the lodge. 3 good years, training handlers, writing her memoir, watching the legacy grow. She died in her sleep, peacefully. Rebel beside her, the dog had followed 2 weeks later. Old age and a broken heart. They were buried together on her property, under the mountains they'd both loved. But her name was here too, with her team, where she'd always belonged. Ryan placed flowers on each stone, starting with his father's. Hey, Dad, been a while. He knelt, hand on cold marble. Wanted to give you an update. The task force is working. We've rescued 47 women this year, arrested 32 traffickers, all because you and your team showed us the way. He moved to Shadow's Stone. We trained 6 new handlers using your methods. They're out there now, doing the work, saving lives. Your legacy didn't die with you. It's growing. Footsteps behind him. He turned. Emma, now 25. Professional clothes, confident walk, a survivor who'd become an advocate. Hey, she said softly. Thought I'd find you here. What are you doing in D.C.? Testimony before Congress, new anti-trafficking legislation. They wanted survivors to speak, to make it real. How'd it go? I think we changed some minds. They stood together, looking at the stones, at the names of people who'd paid ultimate prices for believing that some fights were worth fighting. Your organization is doing good work, Ryan said. I read about the safe houses, the legal assistance programs. We're trying. It's not enough. It's never enough, but it's something. That's all anyone can do. Something. Emma knelt beside Shadow's stone, traced the name with her finger. I think about her a lot, about what she did, coming for us when she didn't have to. She had to. It's who she was. I know, I want to be like that. Someone who doesn't walk away when it's hard. You already are. Emma smiled, stood. I have to get back, but I wanted to say thank you for finishing what she started, for keeping the mission going. Always. She left. Another warrior in the long line of people who fought darkness in their own ways. Ryan stayed until sunset, talking to stones, to memories, to ghosts who'd earned their rest. His phone buzzed, text from the new class of handlers he was training. Ready for tomorrow's exercise, he typed back. Always ready. Because that's what it meant to be Vanguard, not a unit, not a designation, a mindset, standing between evil and innocence. Being willing to pay the cost, refusing to walk away when the fight was hard. His father had understood that. Shadow had understood that. All 7 handlers had understood that. Now a new generation was learning. The mission continued. The legacy endured. And somewhere in Montana in the mountains, Shadow had loved young handlers were being taught the old ways by instructors who'd learned from the best. Evil would always exist, but so would people willing to fight it. That was the trade. That was the cost. That was the choice, and Ryan had made his choice the same way his father had. The same way Shadow had. To stand, to fight, to protect, no matter the cost. He saluted the 7 stones, sharp, crisp, respectful. Mission continues. Rest well. Then he turned and walked away, into the sunset, into the next mission, into the future that his father and Shadow and 6 other handlers had died to protect. Behind him, the 7 stones stood eternal, names carved in marble. Proof that heroism wasn't myth. It was real. It was costly, and it mattered. Always.